Hey everyone, it's Sam over at Scorpio Rising Astrology, and we are here today on Saturn's Day to record our Saturn-ruled signs, and this video is all about Aquarius, the water bearer. Contrary to popular belief of some people who just glance at astrology, Aquarius, the water bearer, is not a water sign. But it does have some interesting water themes, and we can definitely learn from that symbolism. So let's go ahead and dissect our friend, the water bearer. Okay. So here is a lovely image of Aquarius as the water bearer. We have there we go. Also, the tagline of Aquarius that I've kind of fused a couple of its popular meanings together for is the inspired rebel. Now, Aquarius has a lot of really fun mythology, and one of the big myths that I love to talk about with Aquarius is the myth of Prometheus. And Prometheus as the figure who stole fire from the gods and brought it down to humanity. You know, that's just such a wonderful caption of what Aquarius stands for, bringing the higher ideals, the higher intelligence of our universe down to the average person for their personal use. So when we talk about Aquarius as the water bearer, it's not just water that Aquarius bears, it's literally ideas and concepts. And because of that, Aquarius is often thought of as one of the most inspired signs of the zodiac. But in order to be inspired, Aquarius is also somewhat of a rebel and has a tendency to not necessarily be so conforming, as it were, which is really where we get some fun interplay, because Saturn, the ruling planet, is all about control. Okay. So here we have another aspect of the water bearer, just really pretty image here. The water bearer with Aquarius is traditionally, excuse me, water bearer of Aquarius is traditionally going to be holding some sort of vase. And then you could argue that the waves of Aquarius, just kind of jumping forward to the symbol, are the waves that Aquarius pours out of its jug, its vase, its vessel, or its container. But again, we're really looking at the metaphor of Aquarius, and the water that Aquarius bears and the vessel that it has is not necessarily just for water. It's also the vessel as representing the body, the vessel as representing the mind, the heart, and the water within it, really talking about the transmission of information, of concepts, of spirituality, of faith, of emotion, of thought processes, of physical healing even. So lots of things kind of packed into that myth of Aquarius. But Aquarius is an air sign, and this is where we get some of the strong associations with Aquarius having strong minds specifically, because again, air is the element of intellect. Air is the element that really is able to help us to communicate, literally using words, the breath in our lungs, the voice that we have in order to share that information, share those concepts, share those ideas. Aquarius as an air sign also tends to rule the electrical signals that are floating through the air at all times. Aquarius, secondarily ruled by Uranus, is a very electric energy. So as opposed to kind of Aquarius being thought of as the water bearer, I will often think of Aquarius as the lightning rod, and that being a little bit more of an appropriate image for that static, for those messages, for that receiving as well as giving, that transmission, that communication, that back and forth, that air really represents as an element. Now, another thing to understand about Aquarius is that the mode of this sign is fixed, which again comes through very much in the Saturn rulership of this sign. The lightning rod, the rod that is literally fixed, that is transmitting and receiving, the kind of radio tower of Aquarius is a good thought to kind of have When we look at the fixed mode of Aquarius, another thing that I really enjoy, another image that I really enjoy, is the image of the albatross. And why do I think of the albatross? You could think of an eagle, any bird of flight, but I like the albatross specifically because it has the oceanic association of the water element of the water bearer, indicating kind of the metaphor of the sea of information and resources that Aquarius can draw from. But albatross are known to fly very long distances. Their wingspan, their size, as well as their strength. They are birds that tend to bless sailors because of their ability to fly long distances over the ocean. But that also requires a lot of technique and a lot of very deep intelligence in order to navigate, and the strength to kind of back up that wingspan. So I really like the albatross as a kind of spirit animal of Aquarius, oceanic in nature, but also able to fix itself, to fix its position, to glide, to use air currents, to really achieve distances that very, very few creatures on this earth can cover, like the albatross. The ruling planet is Saturn, but Saturn in Capricorn is a very different feeling from Saturn in Aquarius. Again, Aquarius is an air element versus Capricorn being an earth element. And so one is light, one is dense, one is cardinal and moving, one is fixed and static. And so these two Saturn-ruled signs can be thought of as similar, but they're very, very different energetically because of their different element and their different mode. But they both represent sides of Saturn. You know, Aquarius is the genius of the zodiac because of the inspirational air qualities. But one of the things that Aquarius does tend to do that's very similar to Capricorn is to isolate. Okay? The symbol of Aquarius, again, we could think of as the water, the waves that are pouring out of the vessel of the water bearer, but I like to think of them a little bit more as waves of transmission. The highest virtue of Aquarius is going to be inspiration, is going to be the literal thoughts and ideas and power, the power of information. Yeah, when we think of today's day and age of the internet, like the internet is a perfect example of the ocean of information that Aquarius would represent if you know how to ask for it, right? Aquarius is tricky like that because they know so much and have so much ability to tap into that universal resource pool of knowledge, very similar to the way that Pisces would intuitively, although Pisces is tapping into a spiritual realm of consciousness, and Aquarius is tapping into an informational realm of awareness. Yeah, the energetics are a little bit different. There's still that idea of massive amounts of inspiration and knowledge that Aquarius can pass down through the channels. The deepest weakness I also find super funny with the albatross analogy is humaning. Aquarius, because of its quirky nature, because of its connection to the gods, we could think of, because it's so high up there, locked in its ivory tower, fiddling with its experiments, but also Aquarius, kind of like with Prometheus, being of the gods, right? Aquarius doesn't really do human things very well. All of my Aquarius friends, they'll forget to eat, they'll forget they'd really forget their head if they didn't have it attached to their shoulders. You know, there is this idea of being grounded, of being, in some ways, even though it's a fixed sign, kind of ritualistic with the basic needs of eating, of hydrating, of sleeping, of basic communication between two human beings about everyday things, talking about the weather. You know, Aquarius doesn't really do those things well. There are more important things on Aquarius's mind, like the cure for cancer, or how to rob a bank, or something that's, you know, a little bit more abstract, as opposed to kind of like, oh, well, should I have the soup or the salad? Or, you know, it doesn't really do things that are grounded very well. And I love this image with the albatross, because albatross can fly these long, long distances, but when it comes to landing, they absolutely suck. And they will often crash land because they're such bad land animals. And that's what I love about the albatross and the image of Aquarius, is when it comes to just doing these miraculous feats of airborne activity, they are so good at it. But when it comes to actually landing on the ground and doing things that are rooted in physical experience, Aquarius just completely falls flat on its face. And this is where they get the reputation of being kind of alien or quirky, or not necessarily having the people skills that Aquarius is known for. It's kind of like that Einstein energy. You know, why would you focus on human things when you have such complex mental processes going on? So much inspired thinking, so much channeling that's happening between you and these invisible wavelengths, these waves of transmission that nobody else can see but you. Why would you focus on what you had or what you need to have for breakfast, you know, or when the last time you drank water was? Like, why would you do that? You wouldn't. So inspiration, highest virtue, humaning, the deepest weakness. Now, the needs of Aquarius are somewhat similar to Saturn. Time and independence, very important for Aquarius to nurture and to foster space for that inspiration. Now, one thing that I do note that Aquarius needs, more so than Capricorn, the other Saturn-ruled sign, is a translator. Yeah, and I say this with love to all of my Aquarius people, or anybody who has had a close relationship with Aquarius. Sometimes the words that come out of their mouth don't really make a lot of goddamn sense. And sometimes they do need somebody who's very good with words in order to translate for them. Somebody who understands the way that they think, the way that they speak. Yeah, because it can be very otherworldly. And it often feels like they're speaking a language that is not necessarily human. And that I think is kind of part of the job of Aquarius overall, is to spend time kind of spinning the straw into gold, weaving those thoughts and ideas into something that's a little bit more tangible, something that's a little bit more grounded. Like that is the task of Aquarius. But sometimes they need help translating their findings. Yeah, so it always helps to have somebody who can understand the language and translate for the Aquarius if they're not necessarily too good at that step themselves. Aquarius, just like Capricorn, very smothered by emotion, very smothered by interference, because if you're not on an Aquarius's wavelength, you have nothing to contribute. Yeah, even the idea of having the translation or having a translator or somebody who can really kind of conceptualize the ideas. Sometimes I've had Aquarius friends kind of get mad at me, like when I try to speak their ideas back to them, they'll say, no, that's not what I meant. I said, well, that's exactly what you just said, honey. That's exactly the thought process. And they're like, well, I'm thinking about something different. It doesn't feel like that. It doesn't taste like that. It doesn't smell like that. That's not the idea. And we go back to the drawing board. So I think that when it comes to interference, it can be the most benign of interference, but it can also be somebody who's poking and prodding them to eat, poking and prodding them to do human things, poking and prodding them to put down their experiments and to go out in the sun for 2 seconds, you know, to focus on the human-based tasks that can sometimes be considered, you know, interference. Same thing with emotion. You know, Aquarius as an air sign doesn't really do heavy feelings very well. And if they do heavy feelings, it's a little bit hard to pull them out of their funk if they get too heavy, because again, they're a fixed sign. So when they grab onto an idea, when they grab onto a thought, they hold on to it with everything that they have. And if they've justified the need to feel sad at this moment, it could be a week before they recover from that, as opposed to the more mutable signs, which are constantly changing their mental emotional state on a moment-to-moment basis. Aquarius will latch on to those states and not really let go of what it feels like to be in that doom and gloom or that inspired place. Kind of losing the Aquarius to their own thoughts and feelings is kind of part of the package. But that is also what makes them such magical and kind of unicorn creatures. The last thing that Aquarius is smothered by is distraction. Aquarius does like that fixed element of really trying to go deep with a particular idea. But if there are too many pots on the stove, if there are too many irons in the fire, then that distraction can sometimes be very overwhelming to Aquarius. And Aquarius, as an air sign, especially an air sign that's associated with the nerves, Aquarius's anxiety starts to triple when it has multiple assignments, multiple projects going on at once, unless they're interconnected. But even then, Aquarius will kind of consolidate them into one project. But if there are too many things going on, too many plates to balance, Aquarius can't fixate on one and can't channel that information, can't lightning rod that information into a single idea. And that becomes really difficult for Aquarius when their energy starts to be spread or mutable instead of fixed air, which is what they really appreciate. Cool. So that is Aquarius in a nutshell, the inspired rebel, the sign that is both Saturnian and fixed and stubborn, but also has that air, that kick you in the face nature of really strong ideas and opinions that can be quite inspirational to others. So let me know what you think about Aquarius, if I hit the nail on the head for you, if you have major Aquarius placements, or if you think I forgot something. Feel free to use the comment section below. Make sure to tune in for all the Signs 101 videos that we're doing. Today is Saturday, so we're doing the Saturn-based signs. We'll pick it back up on Sunday with the Sun and Leo, the opposite sign of Aquarius, and we'll continue to do these throughout the whole zodiac. I am a professional astrologer as well, so if you have some Aquarius placements that you're trying to chew on or you would like more information on, we can always work one-on-one with your natal chart to unpack the mysteries of what the stars have to say for you. Also, if you're interested in learning astrology, you can always go to my website and download some of the online classes that I have. Just go to ScorpioRisingAstrology.com and you'll be able to see everything that I have to offer, from one-on-one sessions to pre-recorded online classes. And that is all we have today for this video. In the meantime, may the stars be ever in your favor.